Joining me in studio, someone I've not met before. It's been nice chatting with the Vice Chairman of the County Board of Supervisors, Thomas Galvin. First of all, thanks for coming all the way down here. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Mike. Nice to meet you.
Let's talk. I want to talk about this budget. I've got an overview in front of me. And the reason why I think this is such a big topic is this is a huge budget. Let's talk about the numbers first.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're in a huge county.
Yeah.
Maricopa County is 4.5 million people and growing. We're the fastest growing county in the country, which is great. But, we don't want to be victims of our own success. But with that, we oversee the second largest budget in the state after the state budget. So our budget, we're very proud of the fact over the last 4 years, we have cut property taxes every single year. This year, we've reduced the overall budget by 11%, which, Mike, you never see that happen.
Never.
You never see government shrink.
I was looking at the numbers, and I thought it was a typo.
Right.
That there's been a reduction.
Yeah, and we reduced it by 3% last year. So I'm not a math major, but that's 14% over 2 years. But at the same time, public safety is our number one priority. It's my number one priority. We oversee the sheriff's office, the county attorney's office, jails, courts, all of that. And that is about half of the budget. That is the main responsibility of the county, is setting a good budget and overseeing public safety funding.
Let me ask you about that, because we often go to, and I do the same thing in talking about law enforcement and staffing issues in law enforcement, because that's a big issue. But also at the county attorney's office, they should not have to make decisions on whether or not to try a case. It should be about guilt or innocence. It shouldn't be about staffing.
Right.
How is the county attorney's office doing in staffing, and what are you doing to set them up for success in that?
Absolutely. So since I came on as a county supervisor 2 years ago, besides the budget, the two most important votes I have taken is to appoint our sheriff and our county attorney. We have Sheriff Russ Skinner, and we have County Attorney Rachel Mitchell. And when we work with them, we sit with them, we say, what do you need? There is so much going on right now. We have violent crime. We have an issue with the border. We have, defund the police movement. All this stuff is coming at them. And so we sit with them and we say, what do you need? And one of the things that Rachel Mitchell identified was there was a large vacancy rate at her office. And she said, I need to turn this ship around. So she came up with an idea to recruit people, even from out of state, and to tell lawyers and prosecutors, hey, it's a great job here to work at Maricopa County Attorney's Office. And she has now closed the gap and virtually filled up every single position that was unfilled. And that's because the funding we provide for her, and then she implements it, and she's done a terrific job.
How has the county been able to maintain growth, but also not go into debt?
Yeah.
How have you done that?
It's a simple philosophy, Mike, and stop me if you heard this one. Do not spend more than what you have. So when we do our budgeting...
Well, I've heard that, but just never from anybody elected to office.
Yeah, but this is actually, you're seeing it in practice. We have a phenomenal budget team, but we have 5 supervisors who really take care of Maricopa County's taxpayer money. For me, my core philosophy is to be a good steward of your taxpayer money. So what we do is we do conservative estimates, not the most, we have pessimistic estimates and optimistic estimates, but you have to have a conservative estimate. Where are we going to be 3 years from now? Where are we going to be 5 years from now? How do we project the revenue? And from there, that's how we decide how we spend.
But you're not saying conservative as in political. You're saying conservative.
Conservative with a small c,
Correct.
But I also think that aligns with my conservative big C philosophy.
So how do you work? How is the body as it's made up? Do you work well with the other supervisors that are the opposite side of the political aisle as you?
Yeah, so there's 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat, and we work in a bipartisan fashion, but we have a core philosophy, which is to take care of taxpayer money. But last year's budget was $4.3 billion. This year's budget was $3.8 billion. That doesn't happen by accident. You don't just reduce 11% in your budget just by saying, hey, we're going to wave a magic wand. So some of the things we've done to address it is we've paid down our pension debt. So now we have fully funded the pensions for correction officers, our prosecutors, and our detention officers. And when we're at 100% fully funded pensions, which you don't see, by the way, I'm going to repeat this again, at government departments anywhere in the country, that really helps us with cost savings. Those are the kind of things that we do to save money in the long run for taxpayers.
You had mentioned to me earlier, before we went on the air, about using the one-time money from both the Trump administration and the Biden administration, and how you handled that differently than maybe some. And I know you're not saying this to be negative about cities and towns, but I'm saying comparing it to cities and towns, it was a one-time expenditure from them, and it was for you as well.
Right. So when the economy hit a downturn, President Trump had the CARES Act, and then after him, Joe Biden came in with ARPA. And we were very careful with these monies because you all of a sudden have a ton of monies flowing through here. You're distributing it to cities and towns as well, but you're distributing it to programs and to people in need. But what we didn't want to do is what I would say is become addicted to the money, because at some point you're going to hit a fiscal cliff. And we knew that other cities and towns would not be as disciplined as we were, but we made that a core tenet. And so all of the funding that we have done has now been allocated, paid through. And so for that reason, we are in good financial stead. We have tons of reserves ahead, months of reserves ahead. We are in good financial shape because we didn't take that money and expect it to flow forever.
So, in other words, where some of the cities and towns, as you were saying, hired people in permanent positions
Right.
being paid with temporary money,
Right.
now they've got to find a way to raise revenue to continue those jobs if they're going to keep those
And we
jobs.
only identified those monies for one-time projects or situations.
Vice Chair of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, Thomas Galvin, is joining us. We're talking about the budget. Can you explain to the people that are listening how the county raises its money? Where does it get the tax revenue from the taxpayer? How
Yeah.
do you get it?
So we get it from a variety of ways, including the sales tax, state money, fees, but we get a large chunk of it from your property tax. And one thing that I saw 2 years ago when I first came onto the Board of Supervisors, inflation was really ramping up. And also people's home valuations were ramping up. So I think people were being like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get really hit by my property tax bill next year. And so I told my colleagues when I came on, I said, I believe we can do the largest tax cut in county history. And we did it. But then what we've done is we cut the tax rate every single year. So you might see your tax bill and be surprised, but it's because that rate that gets multiplied against your valuation is the reason why we've been able to cut the rate by 17% over the last 4 years. But we're raising money, but we're able to do it in a way that we can still spend the money in the services that we have to provide.
And what it does is it reduces the percentage that people are paying, but it still gives you the revenue because the valuation is that much higher.
Right.
So you're able to continue to collect the money you need to do the job,
Yep.
but without overtaxing people.
Exactly. And one of the things that the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors has done is that we have had our budget stay level or grow less than the rate of growth and the CPI.
I want to shift gears for a moment away from the budget. Let's talk about what I've been discussing quite a bit is this possibility of a consent decree, DOJ oversight in the Phoenix Police Department. Everyone seems to point to Maricopa County and say, just ask them how it's worked out for them. Can you talk about what it's cost Maricopa County taxpayers and your opinion of what Phoenix should or shouldn't do?
Yeah, we are now in our third sheriff since this lawsuit, which was called the Melendrez lawsuit, has occurred. So we're now in our third sheriff, but we have paid, or if you're listening to this, you have paid $315 million for this lawsuit. The sheriff's office does not have any policies which I would consider to be discriminatory or to be seeking out any certain group. But what happens is that it's all the paperwork, Mike. Every single time you do a traffic stop, you have to go back to the office, you have to fill out all this paperwork. We have a federal monitor that's been assigned to oversee the sheriff's department, assigned by the federal judge. The federal monitor has been paid about, I believe, $27 million. Out of that $315 million. We have to pay for leasing for a building in downtown Phoenix, which a monitor sometimes doesn't even go to for years, which is $1 million.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Is it not true that they said it was because of COVID, but we were paying
Yeah.
for space, and they hadn't been here in 3 years?
Yeah, they probably have been there since, maybe when the news reports came out, but still that means $1 million for the Lours building downtown. But overall, what has this done? We have vacancy rates at the with our detention officers. We have vacancy rates with our sworn deputies. I want sworn deputies to be out in the street patrolling, either helping you, God forbid, if you're in a car accident, or helping you, God forbid, if you're the victim of a crime. At the same time, we run the jail for 24 law enforcement agencies around the county. My fear is that if Joe Biden's DOJ takes over the Phoenix Police Department, which to me would just be a horrible concept, it would decimate the Phoenix Police Department. It already is hard enough to recruit people to work there and to keep people on. They are losing people through attrition. There is a mayor, there is a city council, there is a city manager, there's a police chief. They're all working to address any issues that any police department across America has. I'm the grandson of a cop, so I grew up admiring and respecting law enforcement, but I think we all do. And the prospect of this happening in Phoenix would just be terrible.
From a money standpoint, I don't see how it's improved the agency. It would be one thing to say it's a huge amount of money if they could show marked improvements. They're not even telling you, I believe, when this is going to end, or I've heard moving the goalposts, that every time there is a standard that is set, it moves and changes where it's never really attainable.
That's right. And I will say the Sheriff's Office and our current Sheriff, Russ Skinner, have done a tremendous job of addressing all of these issues, doing their job, right? You have to report to the federal judge. That is a fact. But when there are standards like 94% compliance, but you have to hit certain metrics, not on a rolling average, but every single month you have to hit a certain number, which is literally impossible to do. It's the bar is set so high that you have to go back to the judge and say, well, we didn't do it. And it just doesn't make sense from an efficiency standpoint. If you want the Sheriff's Office to thrive, if you want people to be protected, would this be the way to go about doing it? No. And the other thing is, Mike, the monitor has a financial incentive, all of this. He's getting paid to write these reports and to say the Sheriff's Office isn't doing this, this, and that. Where is the incentive to say, you know what? My job is done here.
Right.
I need to just close up shop and head out. That's the perverse incentive that we have here in this situation. And you and I both know that these federal monitor situations with other cities around the country, we have not seen improvements in these cities. And it's the people who live in high crime areas who are getting hurt the most.
Yeah, it's not shown improvement in any situation. So I also want to ask you, while we're kind of on this topic, if you don't mind sharing with me as an observer of this, I've watched, and it's kind of flown under the radar, there has been a lot of vitriol toward the supervisors. It had a lot to do with the Maricopa County elections. It starts there, but it permeates everything. So when you talk about a budget where you've cut 14% in 2 years and you're doing all of these things that taxpayers, especially on my side of the aisle, should be very, very happy about, it has gotten, let's be honest, it's been pretty ugly in some of your meetings. Can you address that? Do you want to address that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a great point. When I came onto the Board of Supervisors 2 years ago, I said public service has never been more unappealing, but never more important. This is an important job, running and administering a county of 4.5 million people. Doing a budget like this is an important job. But it really is sad and heartbreaking to see that people, I think, have really just been weaponized or activated by what they see in social media. I think a lot of people just live in a little bubble, and they either only consume what they want to hear or they're only consuming one part. But the problem is when people go downtown and they start screaming and yelling at other people or at elected officials, it has a corrosive effect on the community. It actually permeates throughout the community. And then you see it happening at school board meetings. You see it happen at city council meetings. But then you'll see things that will happen in a parking lot, or you'll read about a road rage incident, or children are witnessing it. And that's the thing that I'm worried about. I really don't want kids to think this is normal. This is not normal politics. I really hope that we get past this stage. At some point, we have to remind ourselves that we can agree, but we don't have to agree all the time. And if you disagree with someone, you don't have to, threaten their life.
And for me, watching it, I know Bill Gates. I don't know him very well, but I know him. But I know Clint Hickman well, and then the family. I've admired the Hickman family for a long time. They have been such a big pillar in business in Arizona for generations. The family as a whole have done so much for charitable contributions around the valley. I met Clint Hickman doing charity work. It's where I met him and got to know him. And so to see the personal attacks on their character, it's one thing to say, I disagree with what you're doing. I think if you and I talk long enough, we disagree on some things. Yeah. But to go after someone's character and accuse them of being a treasonous,
right?
I just, that's the part of it that I felt like I had to defend their character, because whether you agree or disagree with some of the decisions they've made, these are good people.
Bill and Clint are patriots. They love America. They love Arizona. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to serve with them. And these people go to work every single day and apply their conservative Republican principles on the things that matter that come across our desks, like the budget. But Clint Hickman, and you point him out, he had protesters at his home, where his wife and kids were there.
Over 100 people.
And it happened to him over and over and over again. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But he's not the only one. We know there's other elected officials here in town. Same thing happened again. But when you're accused of treason, when you're going to work every single day and you're doing things to help taxpayers, I just think it's ironic.
Do you think it's worse, or it feels worse, when it's coming from people that are on your side of the political aisle? Or do you think that it doesn't matter who's saying it? It's just a horrible feeling to get that.
It's bad no matter what, from which side of the political aisle it's coming from. But when your own political party is actively working against you and not doing so in good faith, it is really disappointing. But I want to add one more thing, Mike. When the people are silent, who also know better and are not speaking up, I noticed that as well.
Listen, I really enjoyed meeting you, and I hope you'll come back. There's so much more we can talk about as time goes on. I want to talk about some of the things with the sheriff's office that are changing and some of the good things that are happening. So if you don't mind, let's make an appointment to do this again.
Let's do it.
Thanks for watching The Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.